Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the channel. Most of you know who I am. And for those of you who don't know who I am, my name is KrimsonKreamer and I play video games. And today we are back with another Yu-Gi-Oh! Deck build. And we're going to be doing this one a little bit different because I want to show you two different deck builds that I currently have for this same archetype. So first I wanted to go over the archetype itself and then show you guys the two different decks that I've built for this archetype. Now, the archetype that we are going to be going over today is the SWORDSOUL archetype. It is one of the brand new archetypes that just got into the game. I've been really excited for it because, for me personally, I like the worm monster cards because worms, they're just different. It's, you know, a variation of a dragon. It's not technically a dragon, but you know, it's also the same with the Tenyis because all of the Tenyi cards are worms, so it was just a very interesting way to get me into that type, and because the SWORDSOULs are worms, I decided that I wanted to build a deck with them, and they are actually really good cards, and like I said, I wanted to build decks out of them, and I built two. So first, I'm going to go over the cards, then I'm going to show you the deck builds and some gameplay that they can do. So first off, we have our main deck monsters. The first one is the SWORDSOUL of Mo Yi. Now this is probably the main one that you're going to want to run in all of your decks because of its grandio effect of if this card is normal or special summoned, you can reveal one SWORDSOUL card or one worm monster in your hand. Special summon one SWORDSOUL token, which is a worm, tuner, water, level 4, attack 0, defense 0. While that token is in the monster zone, the player who summoned it cannot special summon monsters from the extra deck except synchro monsters. If this card is sent to the graveyard as synchro material, you can draw one card. You can only use each effect of SWORDSOUL of Mo Yi once per turn. Now, like I said, this is the card that you're going to want to be using the most for the SWORDSOUL deck because if you can normal end or special summon it, you can get its effect off, and its effect is that it summons a level 4 tuner monster, which is great because one of the other cards in the deck is a level 8 synchro monster, so it works perfectly with that. It is probably the best way to get out that monster, and it's easy to set up for any other combos into the other higher level monsters, or if you have other level 8 synchro monsters as well, it's a good way to get into those. Up next, we have SWORDSOUL of Taiyi. I'm gonna mess up these names. Don't even at me at that. This card's effect is you can banish one SWORDSOUL card or one worm monster from your graveyard. Special summon one SWORDSOUL token. Same as before, worm, tuner, water, level 4, attack, defense 0. While that token is in the monster zone, the player who summoned it cannot special summon monsters from the extra deck except synchro monsters. If this card is sent to the graveyard as synchro material, you can send one SWORDSOUL card or one worm monster from your deck to the graveyard. You can only use each effect of SWORDSOUL Taiyi once per turn. Now, the reason why this card has a lot of banishment to it, and a lot of cards that go to the graveyard, is because the SWORDSOUL archetype requires a lot of banishment because of the boss monster that's in this deck. So banishing cards isn't really the end of the world for this deck, especially with the amount of times that you can, you know, regenerate back from banished stuff. There's definitely cards that can bring back from the banished zone, regardless of what you have. I'm actually missing some things in the deck that I'm thinking of right now. But even then, you don't even really need that stuff because a lot of these cards bring them back. And by the time you get to that point, you're going to probably finish the duel because of how devastating these cards can be. Up next, we have Incredible Acilia the Virtuous. Now, this card isn't directly a SWORDSOUL card, but it does have SWORDSOUL in its effect, therefore why it's here. This is a level 4, 1500 attack and defense, spellcaster tuner monster. If your opponent controls more monsters than you do, you can special summon this card from your hand. You can only special summon this card once per turn this way. You can only use each of the following effects of this card once per turn. During your main phase quick effect, you contribute this card, special summon one SWORDSOUL monster or one Fallen of Albaz from your hand or deck. During the end phase, if a fusion monster was sent to your graveyard this turn, add this card from the graveyard to your hand. Now, this is another good card to start up the Sword Soul engine, especially with Mo Yi. You summon out this card, pop it to the graveyard to summon out Mo Yi, get Mo Yi's effect off, and do what you want from there. Also, this card works well as a tuner, so if you have the cards on the field that can, be synchro summoned into, this is a good card to, be able to use as a tuner. Up next is probably one of the higher level monsters of this deck, Sword Soul Strategist Long Yan. This is a level 6 monster, 1200 attack, 2300 defense. This card's effect is if you can discard one other Sword Soul card or one other worm monster. Special summon this card from your hand. Then you could special summon one Sword Soul token. I'm not going to go over that again. While that token is in the monster zone, the player who summoned it cannot special summon monsters from the extra deck except the synchro monsters. If this card is sent to the graveyard as synchro material, you can inflict 1200 damage to your opponent. You can only use each effect of Sword Soul Strategist Long Yan once per turn. Now, this card is used to be able to get out the level 10 synchro that's within the deck, because this is a level 6, and it summons the same level 4 tuner that the other cards can summon out into. This card is good because, again, it can discard cards from your hand to the graveyard, therefore be able to use as banish material later on, and with the added bonus of being able to inflict 1200 damage to your opponent. Just being able to pop off a little bit of extra damage. It's not going to really do too much, but it's still good nonetheless. Up next is probably the more useless card of the deck, Sword Soul Allspice Chungyun. This is a level 6, 2400 attack, 1800 defense. Now, the reason why I say this is probably one of the more useless cards is because of its effect. Before damage conclusion, if your worm monster battles an opponent's monster that was special summoned from the extra deck, you can destroy both that opponent's monster and this card. You can only use each of the following effects of this card once per turn. During the main phase, you contribute one monster, special summon this card from your hand. If this card is sent to the graveyard as synchro material, you can target one card on the field or in either graveyard and banish it. Now, the reason why I say that this card is a little bit more useless of this deck is because of its effect that it does not generate a token to be able to be used to synchro, and you have to get rid of one of your monsters. So it's kind of a give and take. If you have your level 8 synchro out and you need to get your level 10 out and you have this card and one of your other cards to be able to get to the tuner, I would say probably, you use this card to get rid of your level 4 main deck monster to then be able to synchro with the tuner. But like I said, you have the other card that's there, Strategist, who can pretty much do the same thing and generates his own token. So there's really no point in having this unless you can't pull out your Strategist in time. But there's plenty of ways to get that card out if need be, and a bunch of other support to even be able to get out your level 10 synchro monster. Up next, we have the Iris Sword Soul. Now, this card was in here before the other cards, so this is what really got me into the Sword Soul archetype when I saw this card, and I'm like, ooh, Samurai, because I love Samurai type cards. During the main phase, if a monster whose effects are negated is on the field, quick effect, you can special summon this card from your hand. If your opponent special summons a monster, except during the damage step, you can activate one of these effects based on where it was summoned from. If it was summoned from the hand, special summon one monster from your hand. If it was special summoned from the deck, draw 2 cards. And if it was special summoned from the extra deck, draw one of those monsters special summoned from the extra deck. No, destroy one of those monsters special summoned from the extra deck. You can only use each effect of this card once per turn. So this is kind of good. In my own opinion, a lot of people say to not run this card in your deck, but if I'm someone who likes to use the full archetype at its fullest, and this card definitely helps out, especially with that added effect at the top to be able to special summon this card, which I will get to with the extra deck monsters because they have the effects to negate effects. So it kind of works in tandem with what we have. Now keep in mind that this does work against your opponent's monsters, so it doesn't have to be your monsters that have their effects negated. It could also be your opponent's monsters. So keep that in mind when you want to try to run this card and use that effect willingly. If you can negate your opponent's monster while this card is in your hand, you can actually special summon this card from your hand and just, you know, continue steamrolling over your opponent. Now that's it for the main deck monsters. Let's get to the magic and trap cards. The first card we have is SWORDSOUL Emergence. Now this card is a normal spell card, and its effect is add one SWORDSOUL monster from your deck to your hand, or if you control a synchro monster, you can add one worm monster instead. If this card is banished, you can target one SWORDSOUL monster or worm monster you control, increase or decrease its level by 1 until the end of this turn. You can only use each of the effect of SWORDSOUL Emergence once per turn. Now, you really don't need this secondary effect of increasing or decreasing one of your monster's levels, because with how these SWORDSOULs work, they kind of technically all have the correct amount of levels to synchro into other things. This is more or less for cards that are outside of the SWORDSOUL archetype to be able to increase and decrease their level to be able to get to your synchro monsters a little bit easier. But this card is good because it's the searcher of your deck. You definitely want to have multiples of this to be able to get to the SWORDSOULs that you want, and then being able to do what you need to do from there. Up next, we have SWORDSOUL Sacred Summit. This is another normal card. Its effect is target one SWORDSOUL monster in your graveyard, or if you control a synchro monster, you can target one worm monster instead and special summon it. If this card is banished, you can target one SWORDSOUL monster or worm monster you control, increase or decrease its level by 1 until the end of the turn. So it kind of has that same secondary effect of increasing or decreasing a level. However, the difference is that this card is your monster reborn of this deck to be able to summon back your SWORDSOULs from the graveyard. You kind of want to use this in tandem with Mo Yi because it special summons Mo Yi, and you can get the tuner from Mo Yi. So this is kind of used in that situation. Or even if you have one of your extra deck monsters that are there, one of the two synchros, you can be able to special summon it back with this card as well. Up next is the trap card of one of the trap cards of this deck, SWORDSOUL Assessment. Target one face-up monster you control, banish up to 5 SWORDSOUL cards and or worm monsters from your graveyard, and if you do, that monster gains 300 attack for each card banished this way. If this card is banished, you can special summon one SWORDSOUL token, same as before. While that token is in the monster zone, the player who summoned it cannot special summon monsters from the extra deck except for synchro monsters. You can only use this effect once per turn. So now this card is basically used to increase the attack of one of your monsters, most preferably your boss deck, your boss monster of your deck. And if this card is banished, you can special summon a SWORDSOUL token, so that's kind of good for that. Outside of that, I wouldn't really run a lot of these. I kind of only run the one anyway, so... But it's still a good card to have because, like I said, you can banish up to 5. It doesn't have to be exactly 5. So if you have 3 in there, that's fine. And then that's an extra 900 attack to get over anything. And with a lot of your monsters, you can pretty much steamroll a lot of stuff anyway. And then finally, we have SWORDSOUL Blackout. Now, this is the one that I like the most. Target one worm monster you control and 2 cards your opponent controls. Destroy them. If this card is banished, you can special summon one SWORDSOUL token. Same effect as the other card, but it's that first effect that you really want to use, which is that you can target one of your worm monsters that you control, so it doesn't have to be a SWORDSOUL, it can be any worm monster, and then 2 cards your opponent controls and destroy them. So that's kind of good to be able to get rid of stuff using the fodder that's on your side of the field. Like once you have your main deck monsters out or your extra deck monsters out and you have a bunch of extra stuff to be able to sacrifice, this card is good for that. And I run multiples of this in my decks, and you should too. Alrighty, now we're going to go on to the extra deck monsters, because there's actually only 2 extra deck monsters of this archetype. The first one is SWORDSOUL Grandmaster Chixxiao. This is the level 8, 2800 attack, 1000 defense. Just requires 1 tuner and 1 non-tuner worm monster, so obviously you're going to be using SWORDSOUL. This card's effect is, if this card is synchro summoned, you can add to your hand or banish 1 SWORDSOUL card from your deck. Quick effect. You can banish one Sword Soul card or one worm monster from your hand or graveyard. Then target one other effect monster on the field. Negate its effect until the end of this turn. You can only use one Sword Soul Grandmaster once per turn, and only once that turn. So this card is good because as soon as you summon it, you're able to pull to your hand one other Sword Soul card that you have, and then with its quick effect to be able to banish a Sword Soul card from your hand or graveyard, and then target one of your opponent's monsters that has an effect. Boom, negate that effect until the end of the turn. Really good to have, and like I said, it's going to cycle through your cards in your hand or graveyard to banish them, and the reason why you want these cards banished is because of the next monster whose effect is based on banishment, and that is Sword Soul Supreme Sovereign Xing Ying. Now this card is great. It's a level 10 synchro monster, 3000 attack and defense, one tuner, one non-tuner monster. And his effect is for each banished card, this card gains 100 attack and defense, and monsters your opponent controls lose 100 attack and defense. So while he gains attack, all of your opponent's monsters are going to lose attack. That's great. If this card would be destroyed by card effect, you can banish one card from your graveyard instead. If a card is banished except during the damage step, you can banish one card from both your opponent's field and graveyard, and you can only use each effect of this card once per turn. Now this is great because this card's effect works with your opponent's banished deck as well. So being able to banish a lot of things from the field, you're gaining attack, your opponent's losing attack. If this card would be destroyed, you can send a card to the graveyard instead. You can banish one card from your graveyard instead, so you can pop something from there, and it could be any card, so it could be the magic cards or the trap cards, so you can get that stuff off. And then with the added effect of if a card is banished outside of the damage step, this card can then banish two cards from your opponent's side of the field, both on the field and in the graveyard. So this card is just great to have overall. There really is no problem with it, especially with its having 3000 attack and defense. So it's pretty much even right there. And then with all the added bonuses of making your opponents lose attack and gain attack, it's great. It's a great card to have. It doesn't even have to be a Sword Soul card, especially because it doesn't even specifically say Sword Soul. So you can run this in any banished deck that you want that has synchro potential in it as well. So do with it what you want at that point. I think it's just a really good card, and it's a really fun archetype to run and play. Now let me show you the two decks that I have. We're going to go over the one that is, more mainstream, and then we're going to go over the one that I built that I like to run based on just fun. So now this Sword Soul deck is just strictly Sword Soul, along with some other meta stuff as well. Now, as you can see, that this deck is running some very interesting stuff. We have, some hand traps here. We have Effect Veiler, Ash Blossom, Ghost Bell in the deck. As you can see, we also have some of the Tenyis. We have Tenyi Spirit, Adara, Vishuddha, and Ashuna, because technically these three cards can all add up to level 8 to be able to get out a level 8 synchro. And it works in tandem with increasing and decreasing the levels of these cards. So because, they sit at level 7, you can decrease them to level 6, synchro with a level 4 to get to your level 10, and stuff like that. Or you can just synchro with themselves to get into the level 8 as well. And then you can also see we have some of the Destiny Hero, because we are running the Destiny Hero Destroyer Phoenix Enforcer engine that we just recently got added to Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel. So as you see, we are running a Celestial, we are running a Dasher, along with 2 Fusion Destinies, and then obviously Destroyer Phoenix Enforcer, and we also have Paretta Plant, Verte, Anaconda as well, if need be. Outside of that, with some of the other Tenyi cards, we have Vessel of the Dragon Cycle, which is, be able to send worm monsters to the graveyard from the deck, and then depending on if I have a non-effect monster, because this does work with the tuners, The tuner tokens that you summon, they do count as non-effect monsters, so you can get that added bonus from the Tenyi stuff as well. We're also running some of the Tenyi Link monsters as well. We have Monk in here. We also have Berserker if need be. And then as for the rest of the extra deck that we have for this deck, we have Baxia, Brightness of the Yin Yang. This is a level 8 worm monster. When this card is synchro summoned, you could target cards on the field up to the number of different original attributes of the worm monsters used for the synchro summon of this card. Shuffle them into the deck. Once per turn, you can target one card you control and one level 4 or lower monster in your graveyard. Destroy that card on the field, and if you do so, special summon that other monster from your graveyard. So this is kind of good to just be able to recycle cards from your graveyard, and by destroying one on the field, it's just, like I said, it's just a good recycling of cards, and it's an added bonus of being a worm monster, so, you know, it can be special summoned if need be, and all that other good stuff as well. Another card that we are running is the Draco Berserker of the Tenyi. When your opponent activates a monster effect, you can banish it. If this attacking card destroys an effect monster by battle and sends it to the graveyard, this card gains attack equal to the destroyed monster's original attack. Also, it can make a second attack on a monster during this battle phase. You can only use the effect of Draco Berserker of Tenyi once per turn. So this card is good to have with the SWORDSOUL cards because it is a worm, it is a level 8, and with that added bonus of being able to destroy a monster, gain its attack, and then be able to attack again. This is just a powerhouse of a card to be able to constantly steamroll into your opponent. And then it also has the added bonus of being able to banish a card, so it kind of works well if you have your level 10 out who's, you know, can have continuous banishment potential. Great card to run in this deck. We are also running a Xiaofang, Phantom of the Yin Yang, which is a level 9 tuner. Not really as easy to get out, but you can easily do so with the increase and decrease of your levels. While this synchro summon card is on the field, your opponent cannot activate effects or monsters of the same original attributes as the Yin Yang monsters used for the synchro summon of this card. That's not really what you kind of use this for. When this synchro summon card is destroyed by battle or card effect and sent to the graveyard, you can add one tuner from your deck to your hand once per turn. When a monster your opponent controls is destroyed by battle or card effect, you can special summon one worm monster from your deck in defense position whose original attribute matches the original attribute that one of those destroyed monsters had on the field. So this is kind of good to be able to special summon your worm monsters from your deck, obviously in defense position, if they match the attribute of the destroyed monster. So this kind of just gets some of your synchro potential monsters out onto the field if need be. Not the best card to really, you know, it's there, but it's good. It's good, but it's not fully utilizing its full effects. But, you know, this is definitely a card that you want to have in the deck while you're running it. I also have Leo, Keeper of the Sacred Tree, a level 10 synchro. 3,119 defense. This is good to have, obviously, because of, you know, a lot of monsters that are put out into the field are just kind of base 3,000 attack. So having that 3,100, that extra 100 attack, kind of will help it get over some stuff. And its effect is your opponent cannot target this card with card effects except during main phase number 2. So this is kind of good to kind of just throw off your opponents if need be, and being able to do certain things. And this is the last one, actually, of the level 10 monsters for this deck, and it's Baryon de Fleur. A level 10, 3,000 attack, 2,400 defense. Once per turn, you can target one card on the field, destroy it. While face up on the field, when a card or effect is activated, you can negate the activation, and if you do, destroy that card. You can only use the previous effect of Baron de Fleur once per turn. Once per turn, during the standby phase, you can target one level 9 or lower monster in your graveyard. Return this card to the extra deck, and if you do so, special summon that monster. So, this kind of works well with your level 10, your level 8 synchro monsters, being able to summon them back if need be. Being able to negate an effect if you have to. Now, I really haven't been able to get this card out a lot because by the time certain duels happen, I really don't even need this card. But this is a good card to have, especially if your main deck monster is destroyed and you have no way to really get it back. You still have this backup level 10 in your deck as well. And overall, this deck has been a lot of fun to play. Obviously, you know, you run Regeki, you're running Lightning Storm, and some other support that you have here as well. But overall, this deck is a lot of fun to play, and I highly recommend building this, especially if you want to go meta route. This is the more meta build of this deck, especially with the Destroy Your Phoenix Enforcer engine that you have in it, so do with it what you want there. I really like this card, not even just this card, I really like this deck, and you should definitely build it too. Now this is a deck that I like to use based on just Archetype alone. I love the Tenyi Archetype, like I've stated before, it is one of my favorite archetypes in the game, and SWORDSOUL kind of mixes with it pretty well, so I kind of took the two decks that I have and combined them together. While this isn't really like super meta in terms of, you know, what's going on, it's definitely worth building into if you kind of have both cards. Obviously, you can see I have a lot of the Tenyi cards in here as well. Like, and that's really the only added effect of this deck, is that it has more Tenyi support. I'm running 2 of each of the Link monsters in the extra deck. I think the only other different card that's in this deck that I have here outside of, you know, the Link monsters is Geomath Mech Final Sigma, just because he's a level 12 and you can kind of get that out a little bit easier than the level 10 with the level 6s. There's a lot that's going on there. However, being able to get out a level 12 synchro and doing what you need to do is good then as well. It kind of works. Running a little bit more, running 46 cards. We are running in this deck Storm Dragon's Return. Target 1 banished monster, special summon it to your field, but return it to your hand during the end phase. So this is kind of good to just kind of cycle back your banished SWORDSOUL cards that you have to be able to kind of restart the engines from there, because a lot of these generate tokens, and tokens are obviously just free cards that you can be able to use whenever. I am running a Nibiru in this deck, just to be safe. And just for my own personal reasons, I'm running a Ryu Ukami, a level 8 worm monster, and its effect is if your opponent special summons a monster, your opponent sends 1 card from their extra deck to the graveyard. So this is kind of good to have to stop your opponent from, you know, summoning certain things. It makes them have to get rid of cards from their extra deck and has to make them think a little bit more. Well, it's not the most reliable card to get out if you have your synchro monsters out, because you can kind of get it out with this card if you can summon it from your graveyard, and or just do whatever you really need to do with it. It's more or less kind of like summon from the graveyard. You want to use this to banish, to get it to your graveyard, to be able to use it for certain other effects, and then if you want to be able to use Storm Dragon's Return on it. Like I said, it's not recommended for this deck. I just run it just based on preference because I like the card. It's Ryu Ukami. It's Dragon Wolf. Like, it's a wolf dragon. Like, that's kind of cool. But yeah, both of these decks that I've been using are really good for what they do. They kind of run a little bit differently. This one is more Tenyi support. The other one is kind of just more main meta support. And they both work really well. They work generally the same. This one I just like more because it has more Tenyi support, but the other one works just as well, if not a little bit better. Actually, it is going to run a little better because it has Destiny Hero in it. So, do what you want with both of these deck builds. I really enjoy it, and I hope you guys do too. If you guys do build this deck, let me know how you run it. Obviously, I don't have Max C yet, because if otherwise, I think I'd probably be running a lot more of those. Been spending a lot of my UR points to kind of just get a lot of these main deck monsters and stuff. But what do you guys think? Let me know in the comments below. If you built this deck, what you like about this deck, what you would do for your deck build. And let's just have a friendly chat in the comments. I like to keep it friendly here. And just have friendly discussions, no bashing of the deck builds. And if you guys like what you see, please don't forget to leave a like and comment and subscribe. All that other good stuff. Generally, you guys watching these videos are the biggest support that I can do, but if you are feeling a little bit extra generous, we do have the membership program on this channel, where for the lowest price of $2 a month, you can be able to become a member. It gets you a written shout out at the end of the video. There are higher tiers with better perks, so be sure to check those out if you want to support the channel with a little bit extra help. And remember, it's never required. It's always appreciated. But anyway, I'm going to get up out of here. Have a wonderful day. And as always, good gaming. God bless. Go beyond. And keep on keeping on.